So, you've been through a lot these last couple of days. You've gone through a lot of videos, you've done a lot of activities, you've done a lot of work. You're probably feeling a little tired because we have worked you. And hopefully you're also feeling energized in the sense of you're ready to go home and take all these great ideas and start implementing them into your modules, your lessons. And that's great. And we hope that you will do that. But I want to spend a few minutes kind of wrapping up here and sharing a few last minute ideas. First of all, we started out with this concept of student-centered learning. You know, what is it? How everything we talk about here relates to this, student-centered learning. Teacher-centered learning is the lecture. That's basically what I'm doing to you right now, just talking at you. And our goal is to get you moving from, because most of you are probably still on this end of the spectrum, keep moving in this direction, to the student-centered learning idea, where it's really about the students learning and less about us teaching. We want to do things in such a way that we become a facilitator of their learning process, become a partner in their learning process. Shilon, for example, calls this, I think she called it learner-centered learning. Same thing. It's all about the learner, about the student here. The focus is there. And every single thing that we've talked about, directly or indirectly, relates to that. And also then the idea of establishing learning environments. So here, a learning environment is simply you're standing up in front of your class and talking at them. Here, students are active, they're talking, they're working on formative assessment activities, active learning activities. They're engaging in discussions. They're engaging in groups and team types of projects and activities and those kinds of things. And again, our role shifts in how we interact with our students in that regard. So everything we've talked about has been pointing to this and helping you move in that direction. We also started out with what the whole SPHERE project started out with, and that is this idea of results of a survey that the SPHERE people, both people in your country and others did, where they asked stakeholders of yours, in other words, the people who hire your students, as well as administrators, faculty such as you and probably some others, to come up with what were the strengths and what were the deficiencies, the weaknesses. And they came up with something we're calling the skills gap, this idea that the students, in order to get jobs, once they graduate, but also then to keep the job and perform in that job, are missing some things. They're deficient in some things and need improvement. And those include things like the writing, the speaking English, teamwork, working independently, et cetera, things that we've talked about a number of times. I also introduced the idea that these skills that we're talking about, some people call them career readiness competencies, others call them professional competencies. And that's really what we're talking about, is these kinds of things that are missing. They have all the technical knowledge, but they don't necessarily know how to work together with their colleagues once they get a job. They maybe are not very good at writing. Maybe they're kind of a little bit deficient in the critical thinking end of things. So again, everything we've talked about relates to enhancing these, and we can just check those things off like that. Everything we've talked about relates directly or indirectly to enhancing these skills. When students are working on active learning, what are they doing? Well, they're doing a lot of these things. They're probably critically thinking. They may or may not be writing. They're certainly talking, speaking English. Maybe they're doing a presentation if they're working on group presentations or team presentations. Again, a lot of the things we've talked about, everything we've talked about, frankly, relates to that list, and that will help get students better prepared, not only, again, to get those jobs, but also to keep the jobs and to then progress in those jobs and careers. Okay, we're pretty much at the end here. What do you have to take home? Well, you've got a whole bunch of things. You have a lot of ideas and plans. Things like, I asked you to think about this DFINC's significant learning taxonomy and some of the other components of it that are maybe a little bit different than the Bloom's taxonomy, things like the human dimension and caring and learning how to learn. How can you integrate some of those into your lessons, into your topics, into your module? So you actually already have some ideas on that. Same way here, of how can you counterbalance the forgetting curve? What kind of reviews might you give, and how do you space out those reviews? How do you address a broader range of learning styles in your classroom? So I introduced you to this idea of VARC, the visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic learning styles approach, and that was a fairly simple, straightforward one, but the idea, okay, you do a lot of visual and maybe auditory, but how can you integrate some of these other kinds of things into your lessons so that you're reaching a broader range of learning styles in your classroom? Other things, you have plans, either myself or Chilan, you actually have plans for your modules, your lessons, for active learning activities, engaging students in discussions, students working in groups and teams. So you've got a lot of those ideas. Getting some early feedback. What kinds of things do you want to know from your students? Chilan asked you to write those things down. You've got all that stuff. Enhancing effectiveness of your exams and developing rubrics, those kinds of things. So you've got a lot of these things already started in your worksheets and your handouts. What else do you have? Well, you have experience as an observer watching how these kinds of things are done. For example, Chilan is great at modeling what she's teaching. So she's teaching you how to do active learning strategies. At the same time, she's modeling how do you do that. So make sure that you think and don't just pay attention to what she said, but also how she said it and how she went through that process. You have an experience as a student participating in these kinds of activities, these active learning activities and so on, doing group work. We had you do group work in the workshops and so on. So you understand how the students are thinking about that. How do they feel about doing those kinds of things? So you can understand that as you plan your own activities for your students. And then you have a record of your experience in the Pedagogical Training 2.0 through all these handouts and worksheets that you have. So you have a lot of things to take home, written down, ideas already started to try to implement into your classes and your modules. Another idea I want to introduce to you, and I know if Chilan was here, she would talk this up as well. She'd be a cheerleader for this idea. And that is to think about developing communities of learners for teaching and learning. So groups of people, you've just spent the last, couple days or so working with your colleagues from your university and other universities in Sierra Leone. You are a community of learners with respect to teaching and learning, the things that we've been talking about. You've learned a lot from each other, not just from us. So you've learned a lot from each other, and that's what we're talking about is developing opportunities to meet with your fellow colleagues, again, from the same university, other universities, periodically in some way or another, informally. Again, talk with your colleagues, maybe sharing experiences, set up a little lunch group. Okay, once a month on such and such a day, 3 or 4 or 5 of us are going to get together and we're just going to sit there and share, not complaining about things, but sharing, hey, I tried this activity and it really worked really well, or it did not really work very well. And so we're sharing and we're talking together and getting ideas from each other. Maybe even some more formalized kinds of things like teaching seminars, having speakers come in and talk in terms of seminars, workshops, such as you're participating in right now. So these would be more probably at the campus level. These would be potentially more informal. These are a bit more formal. And then just to kind of give a shout out to this, faculty teaching retreat, we have one of those every year. We've been doing it for, I think, 25 plus years. I've forgotten how long it's been. The mid-1990s, I think, is when we started these. And every year we have, say, 180 to 200 faculty. That's an enormous number of people show up for these things. It's about a day and a half long, or not day and a half, it's all morning and part of the afternoon long. And in fact, Chilan, the other presenter, is the one that does these things. She's the one that puts them together, finds the speakers, plans everything, does a fantastic job in doing these things. And again, that's a large community of learners, of learners about teaching and learning. We have all kinds of topics. Many years ago, 20 years ago, we had speakers coming in, some of the early people who were touting the idea of active learning. We didn't know what active learning was. Well, that's how we started to know about it. And so continuing to learn about it ever since. So again, the idea of a community of learners, don't just walk away and do your little thing, keep talking to your colleagues. Okay, we have a number of folks to thank. And we are very appreciative, both Jelana and myself are very appreciative of the efforts that these people have put in. A number of people from the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning at the University of Illinois, and again, I mentioned before, we're extremely fortunate to have this group to provide support for teaching in all manners, everything, classroom, online, videos. Again, they were the ones making the videos, editing the videos, doing the captioning, and all sorts of things. The Sphere Project itself, and the people in the Sphere Project, some of our colleagues here on campus, Dr. Cook, Richard Cook, and Paul McNamara. Again, some of you perhaps know those gentlemen, not directly involved in these videos, but certainly very, very heavily involved in the Sphere Project and getting Jelana and myself involved in that. And we appreciate them as well. And then your workshop leader. So we can make the videos, we can give kind of assignments and activities and so on, but this is the person who's actually pulling this off. All right, they're the ones that have to go through all the videos, they have to line everything up, they have to think about timing, how long do we use for this, when do we have breaks, all those kinds of things. And they put a lot of work into this, and we very much appreciate the work that they're putting into this. And you, and especially you have been patient, you have participated. I hope you've had some fun as well as learning a lot, and we very much appreciate your involvement and your participation in this series of workshops. So overall, for both Jelana and myself, we thank you and we wish you good luck.